Yeah, holding. Testing, testing. Yeah.
let Rudy decide.
Okay, the moderator, well, yeah.
Yeah, we know.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there's a screen. I was just going to tell everybody hi.
Okay, all right, good to see you.
Hello. If I can invite you all to take your seats, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. So if you can begin to take your seats so that we can begin. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Okay, so I am really happy that we're across the street from Jefferson High School. Do we have any Mustangs in the house?
No, we have SAIC in the house.
SAIC, okay.
Right here. Perfect.
Perfect. I feel like, who else was here? I'd like to begin by telling you who I am, for those of you who don't know me. I'm Lupita Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'll be your moderator this evening, and I'd like to say a bit about myself again, for those of you who may not know me. I'm a daughter of amazing people who happen to be Mexican immigrants. I'm a San Antonio native, but spent most of my adult life in New York City, where I earned my master's in urban policy and organizational change from the New School University. My specialty is institutional and organizational change, using race equity-centered technologies. As an undergraduate student at Texas Tech, I organized a student, city, and statewide effort after Tech administration demonstrated leniency on institutional discrimination. My efforts reached Texas Representative Irma Lerma Rangel, who joined my advocacy campaign, yielding the implementation of my recommended policies that included establishment of Tech's Vice Chancellor position, dedicated to increasing students of color recruitment and retention rates, and to the establishment of its Office of Diversity, which is today's Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. In 2015, when former Mayor Ivy Taylor established the Office of Diversity, due to the advocacy efforts of the LGBTQIA community, and Karen Bain was hired as its diversity officer, I reached out to Karen and introduced her to the Government Alliance for Race Equity, commonly known as DARE. I'm founder of the Thrive Advisory, whose mission is to strengthen change agents and institutions an organization's daily revolutionize through organizational change and race equity analysis. Current clients include Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Roosevelt Institute, an economic policy think tank that informs our Biden administration on economic policy, National Health Law Program, a national team of attorneys litigating at the federal level for federal policy, advocating for quality health care for low-income populations. And I've also been, these past 2 years, the Race Equity Advisor for City of San Antonio's Office of Sustainability, as well as the City Council appointed Technical and Community Advisory Committee and the Climate Equity Advisory Committee. Okay, so enough about me. I'd like to acknowledge those who made this event possible by coming together in partnership. Southwest Workers Union, Democratic Socialists of America, Sunrise San Antonio, Texas Rising, Public Citizen, Move Texas, Sierra Club, Rewiring America. I also want to thank those of you affiliated with this beautiful place called Woodlawn Point Center for Community. Thank you for hosting us today. So before I present our guests, panelists, and the issue that we will be discussing today, let's take a moment to center ourselves through a land acknowledgement. So I'm going to ask you to get comfortable wherever you're seated because we're going to take about 2-3 minutes to center ourselves. So if you want to, whatever that means to you, that means just putting your feet on the ground, putting your hands on your legs, getting relaxed. I'm going to be doing the same as much as I can while still reading. Okay, so the reading exercise we're about to do is inspired by an organization called Climate Woke. So I invite you to close your eyes. Again, get comfortable. So I'm going to count to 4, and I want you to use the full 4 counts to take your inhale. I'm going to count to 4 again, and then you're going to use the full 4 counts to exhale. So we're going to do this maybe 2-3 times on my count, and then continue to breathe on your own as I guide you through a meditation and land acknowledgement. So I'm going to begin. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue on your terms, breathing. And while you breathe, consider that the air that you breathe is finite. It's all the oxygen there is on the entire planet. Meaning, there's no oxygen coming in from anywhere else, and no oxygen is going out. 80% of the oxygen you're breathing is recycled and given to you from our ocean. The air you breathe is the air that your ancestors and their ancestors used to breathe. Remember that your breath is intentional and that you are passing it along to the next 7 generations. Keep your eyes closed if you can and continue to breathe with intention. This is our land acknowledgement. Consider, how is it that you came to this land we now call San Antonio? Did you move here from somewhere else? Were you born here? As much as we may have pride for this land that we call home, or this high school that we may refer to as our alma mater, we must equally or more intentionally recognize that this is not our land, and that before the structure that makes up the Jefferson High School, before that, it was densely populated by majestic trees, majestic animals, a thriving ecosystem with which the Native Americans coexisted in harmony for thousands and thousands of years since the beginning of time. What is not mentioned in some documented accounts and in our everyday conversations is that this land that we inhabit today is the land of the Tapilam Paulipecan people, a tribal community of affiliated bands and clans of the Payaya, Pacoa, Borado, Pacawan, Paguame, Papana, Ilbipani, Charane, Pajalat, and Tilijay nations. The traditional homeland consists, by today's political boundaries, of the states of Texas, Coahuila, Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, and Northern Potosí. They are a people of two countries, yet have been regarded by both as foreigners in their own homelands. We are settlers here. How can we begin to be in right relationship with the Tapilam Paulipecan people? How do we give this land back to its rightful owners? At the very least, how do we take care of this land? How do we become welcomed guests? Although we are colonizers and settlers occupying what is not ours. My wish is for us today to breathe life into our responsibility to this land and to our inherent responsibility to the Tapilam Paulipecan people. How do we commit to this? How do we dedicate resources to make it happen? In our dialogue today, I urge you, lift up what your commitment is and what action you will be taking to become in right relationship with the land and its native people today and every day. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and join us. Thank you. We're thankful for our invited guests who are coming to us in partnership to explore community-led solutions for this complex issue. So this includes Interim President and CEO of CPS Energy, Rudy Garza. Do we have Kathy Garcia here?
Yes.
Can you please come join us if you can?
We're gonna stay.
Or you can stay, I guess it's up to you. Okay. All right, Vice President of Government Relations, Regulatory Affairs, and Public Policy, CPS Energy, Kathy Garcia, thank you. Director of Climate Strategy and Sustainability, CPS, Angela Rodriguez. Thank you. Chair, CPS Energy Rate Advisory Committee, Reed Williams. Thank you. Chief Sustainability Officer, SA Office of Sustainability, Doug Melnick. Climate Program Manager, Office of Sustainability, Neva Dippy. Thank you. Okay. All right, so just so that you all know the run-up show, I'm going to...
Sorry, can you introduce me?
Oh, I'm sorry. And Janie Gonzalez.
And I didn't really introduce myself. I did such a great introduction.
Board on the CPS Energy.
Vice Chair
Vice Chair.
of this part of town from the south side.
Thank you, Janie. Thank you, Janie Gonzalez. Thank you so much. I'm glad we know each other.
Well, we actually have a lot in common. Actually, my graduate work is in organizational development. So I was like, when I was doing your education, I was like, oh, we have a lot in common.
Oh, nice. We'll have to chit chat later.
We did.
Okay, so the runner show, thank you. The runner show, I'll introduce three panelists, and then we're going to do a summary of the issue, and then we'll do opening remarks by panelists, and then have our moderated discussion. Then after that, we'll have questions from the audience. Okay, so Introduce our panelists. To the left of me is Diana Lopez. Diana Lopez is a Chicana born and raised in San Antonio. Her work with Southwest Workers Union, Centro por la Justicia, involves linking issues around environmental justice, living wage, and accountable governance. Southwest Workers Union works to frame public policy to protect the community and include the voices of local residents. It's led to successful strategic campaigns targeting wages, environmental cleanup, economic revitalization, healthcare, and energy policy. As a representative for Southwest Workers Union, Lopez has brought local struggles to 5 United Nations conventions on climate change. She also sits on coordinating committees of the Grassroots Global Justice and Climate Justice Alliance. Lopez is the executive director of Southwest Workers Union and is working towards framing strong equity and engagement components in public policy while uplifting solutions-based community projects for long-term resiliency. Welcome.
And I have one of our youth members. As a surprise, she was able to make it, Brenda Aguilar. So we'll be tag teaming our intro.
Is it on off button on your microphone?
I don't think they're working.
You don't, you know.
Hello?
No, now it is.
Hello?
No.
No, the light's just real quick, just wanted to introduce Brenda Aguilar, who's one of our youth organizers, and we were lucky to have her here today with us. So we'll be sharing some of the introduction pieces.
Beautiful. Love to see our youth. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so next we have Dr. Adelita Cantu, PhD, RN, FAN. She's a native San Antonio and is an associate professor of UT Health San Antonio School of Nursing. Dr. Cantu received her BSN, Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, from the University of Brentwood, a master's in community health nursing from Texas Women's University, and her PhD in clinical nursing research from UT Health San Antonio. Dr. Cantu has over 40 years of experience as a public health nurse. 20 years being a nursing faculty focused on educating nursing students in the intersection of public health and nursing. As a public health nurse, Dr. Cantu's priority and impact is focused on the promotion of health and well-being in vulnerable, marginalized communities. Dr. Cantu is deeply embedded in many local and state collaborations where she brings a critical health perspective to their missions and highlights the importance of social determinants to community well-being. Dr. Cantu has coordinated the UT Health San Antonio mobile COVID-19 vaccine clinics since the beginning of 2021, which has delivered over 28,000 vaccines to people living in vulnerable communities. Dr. Cantu was the first person in San Antonio, Garza County to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. Recently, Dr. Cantu was included among the best 25 nurses in South Central Texas and inducted as a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. Thank you, Dr. Cantu, for being here.
Thank you very much. It is working.
Yes.
Ebony, thank you very much, Lupita. Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. Next, we have Chrissy Mann. She is the Senior Campaign Representative for the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign in Texas. In this role, Chrissy leads and coordinates the team at Sierra Club, working to decarbonize the power sector across Texas with a focus on CPS Energy in San Antonio. She comes to this work as a Texas environmental lawyer with background and expertise in administrative and regulatory law, but with a love for connecting communities to knowledge and solutions. Chrissy graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in conservation biology, and then later graduated from UT's law school. Chrissy's career has spanned state and federal government and nonprofit legal representation and advocacy campaign development. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So the issue at hand. The Spruce coal plant was built in 2010 and was one of the last coal-burning power plants to go online in the United States. For years, the science has been clear that pollution emitted from burning coal catastrophically affects ecosystems, including drastically changing climate and polluting the air we breathe. To many, this makes the closure of the Spruce coal plant urgently necessary. Similarly, is the need to keep energy costs low and affordable for the majority of people in San Antonio, especially for the working class and low-income members of our community. We're here today because community members want to share their solutions for what they want to see our energy future look like. Most of the time, stakeholders are not able to engage with CPS Energy in a robust public way. Board meetings and rate advisory committee meetings, which offer public comment, are held during the day when working class families are unable to attend. CPS Energy's nearly 15-year Citizens Advisory Committee meetings behind closed doors are inaccessible to ratepayers. So our hope today is to have a true dialogue about the level of urgency around the closure of Spruce and around planning from where we shall extract our energy. So with that, let's kick it off. Would love to hear some opening remarks from our panelists. Would love to hear your wisdom and sharing your knowledge on this subject. Diana, would you like to begin?
Yes. Hello? All right. Perfect. Yeah, we got the thumbs up. Buenas tardes, right? Buenas noches, maybe. I'm here really to be able to, I have some of my notes, really in ways that we could transition the coal plants using a justice framework. And so part of the conversation is that there's already existing work happening on the ground all over the U.S. and internationally, different models that are available that use just transition, a vision-led model and process that shifts from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy while meeting the needs of a growing community. And so we're gonna tag team it between me and Brenda, and I'm gonna take it over to Brenda to share a little bit about her work with the Youth Leadership Organization and the involvement of young people within this important conversation.
Thank you, Diana. Once again, my name is Brenda. Hi. We've worked on sustainable programs and engaging youth in conversations in the past couple of years. I'll be graduating high school soon, and so it's important to me to work on strategies of outreach that meet the community members and youth where they're at. The sources of energy is rarely discussed in the public eye. As a municipal utility part of building a society that takes accountability for building a cleaner, greener future, we must expand the conversation to include ratepayers and those who bear the largest burden from the changing climate. This means approaching production and consumption cycles holistically and in a waste-free way. The transition itself must be just and equitable, redressing past harms and creating new relationships of power for the future through reparations. If the process of transition is not just, the outcome will never be. Just transition describes both where we are going and how we got there. As a form of environmental justice, climate justice means that all species have the right to access and obtain these resources needed to have an equal chance of survival and freedom from discrimination. As a movement, climate justice advocates for working from the grassroots up to create solutions for our climate and solutions and energy problems that ensure the right of all people to live, learn, work, play, and pray in a safe, healthy, and clean environment. I will now pass it to Diana.
Thank you, Brenda. And the beautiful part about that is that it's already happening, right? The conversation is already beginning. And many of the solutions that we have to this work there's already groundwork for it, right? There's community organizations right now in this room working towards some of these pieces, working in collaboration to really figure out, and in community to figure out sort of what are potential solutions. We see this not only in San Antonio as well as a network of connected communities all around the US that are using different models to transition from extractive energy into something that is regenerative, into something that is cleaner and greener for the environment. One of those examples that I really love to share is from Navajo Nation, Dene lands over near Arizona. They're the Navajo generation station, which provided electricity to Arizona, Nevada, and California, was just shut down in 2019. And that's an important victory because it was in a just format, because it also, one of the effects of that was that power was being extracted from that community while it wasn't fully meeting the needs. About 25% of the Navajo Nation didn't have access to electricity. And so as the transition of that plant happened, there was a community process that then worked with the workers, worked with the community surrounding it to develop solutions-based approaches. And some of those included the creation of different cooperations around solar, different forms of meeting the energy of the community while still shutting down and working on cleaning up some of the coal plant. And so that's something I wanted to uplift, because I think it's a really beautiful conversation, and I think it's an ongoing struggle as we kind of move into transitions, is ensuring that whatever is in place doesn't cause further pollution. And I think we've seen that transition in many forms in San Antonio. My background is in environmental justice, is around the legacy pollution around Kelly Air Force Base in the south side of town, where I grew up in. And I'm a graduate of South San High School. I tell people I grew up at the end of the runway between these two military bases that didn't dispose of chemicals in a proper way, which then has affected for generations after that. And so now we're working on cleanup, we're working on figuring out what it is, but there wasn't a big community process that came out of that, and what resulted was another form of pollution. And so now not only are we facing legacy pollution on the south side of town, we're facing another increase of a different form of pollution that comes with the export and import of inland port, right? Which brings in another slew of contamination and pollution into a community already burdened, right? And so how do we make it right? What is the gray area between what we have now and where we want to be? Is where we all need to come together to have a process. And it doesn't mean that one or another has the solution. It means that as a community, there is that transparency and that collaboration, that space to be able to figure out what the solution is for each neighborhood. And what the solution is for the Southside community might be different from what it is with another one. And I think we need to really take into account sort of the different place-based spaces that we create as we move into solutions and as we move into transitions of different forms of energy. And I think that basically concludes my work. I didn't talk a lot about Southwest Workers Union, but my work really is engaging and using the environmental justice principles to ensure that our communities are able to speak, are able to share, and are able to create a vision that they want to live in for themselves as well as the generations to come. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Diana. And Linda. Adelita, would you like to share some thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I just want to, I will be here to answer any questions you may have about the health impacts of the pollution that we'll be talking about from Spruce, as well as other things in our environment. So I teach at the Health Science Center School of Nursing, and I spend my time talking, facilitating the learning of students, nursing students, about population health, public health. One of the things I do, hopefully guide them in learning, is that there are what we call social determinants of health. There are things in our society, there are structures in our society that contribute to one's health, sometimes more so than going to see a provider or taking some medication. And examples of this would be like someone who is unable to manage their diabetes because they don't have access to healthy fruits and vegetables because they live in a food desert. Or because they cannot get their medicine, they can't get their insulin, not because they don't have a way to go to the pharmacy, but the fact that they don't have health insurance. Because we've structured health and access to health in our society as being insured. And so that's kind of a ticket in to our health system. And so people that don't have that then have that burden because of that structural barrier. The air that we breathe is one of those things in our environment that we all share the air that we breathe. Whatever part of town we live in, we share that air. People that live closer to a coal burning plant will be more burdened, if you will, with the pollutants that come out. We know, science tells us that from coal burning, we have contaminants that get in the air like mercury, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, soot, coal ash, etc. And those all have a detrimental impact on our health because we do breathe those in. They could result in, of course, respiratory illnesses, asthma. We have here in San Antonio one of the highest discharge rates of children with asthma from the hospital, so hospital discharge rates. So they have an exacerbation of their asthma. And of all the counties here in Texas, we have one of the highest levels of that. So kids are with asthma, having allergens, having pollutants coming to their lungs, exacerbates that. They go into the hospital, they receive treatment, and they go back into their community. But in their community, they're still breathing that air. So it continues on and continues on and continues on. So it's important to understand that our health is not just determined by the medicine we take, exercise that we do. There are some of the structural barriers to our health, and air that we breathe is one of those. So if we have things like a coal burning coal burning plant, or we have live near a highway where there's a lot of car traffic and a lot of vehicle traffic, and you get all the exhaust and you breathe that in. So where we live, many times it's going to have an impact on our respiratory illnesses, asthma, heart attacks. Cardiovascular disease also are things that arise from pollutants and contaminants in the air. And premature death. And one of the things I talk with students about is premature death is really important when we think about public health. People that are dying prematurely at a time when they should be working, when they should be paying taxes, when they should be procreating. That's why the data point of premature death is a very, very important consideration when we look at the public's health. And we do know there have been some the air pollution, the contaminants in the air are associated with premature death. So again, that's what I'm here if you have some questions about the health impacts and what those might mean for people. That's what I'm here today to try to answer some of those questions you may have. So thank you very much, and I'll turn it to Chrissy. Chrissy?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Cantu. Chrissy.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? Great. If you can't, just do this to me and because I'm not sure what it's like. All right, great to be here. I'm Chrissy Mann. I am the senior campaign representative for the Beyond Coal campaign of Sierra Club in Texas, and that's a mouthful. Like my bio said, I try to decarbonize the power sector across the state. It's a big state. I focus a lot of my time and energy here in San Antonio. I happen to live in Austin. My father's side of the family is from San Antonio, and I've been coming here since forever, and I feel like this is a second home, and I'm super privileged and lucky to be able to work with many of the folks in this room for the last at least 6 years or so. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here and grateful to have sort of adopted one of y'all's own, even though I didn't go to high school here. My dad and grandma did though. So I'm here really to talk a little bit about, so we heard some very like on the ground discussions from Deanna about her work, connecting communities to solutions, and we heard a little bit from Adelita, from Dr. Cantu about the public health issues relating to the burning of coal, and I would say fossil fuels in general. And I'm going to provide just a quick run through of some of the regulatory solutions that are in play right now that impact Spruce specifically, that address hopefully both of those issues. And then I want to talk about a little bit of the solutions that are in the hands of, that I think are in the hands of the community and CPS Energy to solve some of this. And then we'll see what everyone else thinks. Basically, as we just heard, coal burning power plants produce a whole slew of pollution. And I'm going to talk about a handful of them. First, carbon dioxide. There's not a federal regulation in place right now that's going to require, that today or in the next few months would require Spruce to do something about their CO2 emissions. But the city has decided that we ought to do something about it and has a climate action and adaptation plan. And Mr. Melnick is here today and can tell you everything about it. But one of the things that I think needs to happen, and I think there's some agreement here, is that CPS Energy needs to make some commitments soon to make sure that we stay on track. Because the commitments in that plan are a little far off and will make it challenging if we don't meet them, if we're not on track to meet them now, to meet them in 2040, 2050. So we need to see something happening and some commitments now to reduce significant CO2 emissions from the power sector in San Antonio. And so big low-hanging fruit is Spruce, and because it's the biggest CO2 emitter in the portfolio. The second thing I would add is, so that's not a formal regulation, but I think the city ought to treat it as a real commitment. And I know that CPS Energy is up to the task to make that happen. Formal regulations coming down the pike from the federal government. The EPA has proposed two related to ozone. Most folks here know that San Antonio is /Bexar County is in non-attainment for the ozone standard. That is ground level ozone. Many of us are old enough to remember the ozone and the hole in the ozone layer. It's not that one. It's ground level, the stuff we might breathe in, that is made in the presence of sunshine during ozone season mostly. We're in it right now with NOx emissions, so that's nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, you might hear called VOCs. And Spruce produces both of those, mostly NOx. And has a target on it because it is not well controlled. Unit 1 is not well controlled for this pollutant. And so when you have a big source like Spruce in the middle of a non-attainment area, it's time to figure out whether or not there's something that should be done with that pollution coming out of that big source. And I'm talking in very big generalities, and if y'all want to get more detailed, let me know. And so we've been in non-attainment for a while here in San Antonio, and right now the EPA is proposing to bump up the attainment designation from marginal non-attainment to moderate non-attainment. And when a bump up happens, that means it's time for the state and EPA to get real serious about putting together a plan to get the pollution levels back down below the standard, or down below the standard for the first time, depending on where you are in the state. And so once this moderate designation is finalized, the state is going to have to be working with folks here in this room through the COGS and the county and all the other different stakeholders to make sure we get a plan in place to reduce the pollution all across the county and hopefully in regional areas too, to do something about the ozone levels across Bexar County. And like I said, Spruce 1 does not have pollution control does not have modern pollution control for NOx, and so it's going to be one of the first things that folks take a look at. CPS already knows this, I'm not telling the news. That's why we've been hearing a lot about Spruce 1 being the first to get a retirement date. It's just time to get a commitment so that can be put right into something that's enforceable as soon as possible. It helps air quality planners, it helps regional air quality planners, it helps the state, it helps the federal government but it also will help CPS Energy plan for the future if they get a firm retirement date and a commitment that they're working towards. It will help the community plan with them. The second ozone related regulation is called the Good Neighbor Rule. This is about our pollution hurting downwind states, whole other states. Texas pollution hurting whole other states coming into compliance with their ozone non-attainment areas. And so EPA has a proposal to cut the pollution by about half for Texas sources by 2026 during ozone season. These are power plants that I'm talking about specifically. And so 2026 is right around the corner. Spruce 1 doesn't have a CR on it. It feels like it's right there next in line to look at, for our regulators to look at and say, like, maybe it's time to do something about the pollution coming from that. I can talk more about that proposal too. And the third one I'll add is a rule that's been in place for a little bit. And this isn't about the stuff coming out of the smokestacks, but about the stuff that's left behind, the coal ash. And CPS Energy is proposing to, or has moved forward with building a new coal ash pond to do something about all the coal ash waste that is going to be generated in the years to come. And I think it's important that CPS Energy work with EPA to evaluate whether or not there's a potential off-ramp rather than continuing to spend millions, maybe over $100 million building ponds that will comply with the EPA's newest coal ash rule. Maybe there's a way to just say, hey, we're going to stop burning coal by date certain, and that's 2028 in the rule. And if that's a possibility, if that's still open, an opportunity, I'd love to hear if that's something that CPS could take advantage of, working with EPA on that. Because other coal plants, the Coleto Creek coal plant down near Goliad, chose that off-ramp. So Vistra chose that off-ramp for them. Welsh up in Northeast Texas and the Perky plant up in Northeast Texas, they're owned by AEP or SPUTCO in Texas. They chose those off-ramps as well. And so meaning they're no longer going to be burning coal at these units, at these facilities after 2028. It feels like it's in line with what CPS has been talking about broadly, what we've heard from many of the leaders, and it'd be great to hear if that's something that folks can take advantage of and can save this community hundreds of millions of dollars and give some finality to the understanding about where we're moving with coal burning for San Antonio. And that's all I wanted to introduce and sort of throw into the fire for a conversation, but I'll hand it back over.
That's a lot of great information. So I just want a personal anecdote. I spent a lot of time in New York City, and I was an avid cyclist, did a half century and all. Anyway, I started cycling a lot when I was here in San Antonio, and I would check the air quality in the mornings. I was stunned. Almost every day, I'd say 90% of the time that I would check the air quality, San Antonio air quality was much worse than New York City. And that was just a striking, shocking realization that I had, because I would have thought it would be the other way around. So I got really concerned about, oh my goodness, what are we doing here? That, I have to think twice about riding my bike now. I did want to come back to a couple things that you all had mentioned. Deanna, you spoke of, and I just wanted to see if you or Brenda could clarify and make a distinction between extraction and regenerative, just to really drive home what those two different things mean.
The green one and those two work. That one and that one work.
All right, perfect. When we talk about extractive economy, it's in the form of extractive as in fossil fuels, things that have to be pulled out, resources from the earth, extraction of money as well, and extractive of the workforce. So all those things, it just kind of like drains and drains and drains, and oftentimes doesn't reward the communities that are basically the gears driving a lot of these systems. And so for us, that includes coal and gas, those two forms of extraction in the terms of what we're talking about today. But and then regenerative in the form of those same things that I mentioned, regenerative forms of energy, regenerative forms in the forms of also resources are distributed among the community that is most impacted, and not kind of extraction of like workforce and extractive of like money from a community that might not benefit from the resources that they live next to, but oftentimes are the ones that bear the largest burden. And so regenerative also in the form of something that makes us happier, like regenerative of people wise, in the form of it's not something that continues to impact the health of that community, and drain a community that might not have the resources in the first place. And so and the last piece around the regenerative piece is that it's something that like reaches our soul and mind, right? That it makes us feel a lot happier. It makes us feel a lot better about being outside. It allows us to be outside. Some of us with asthma can't go outside on certain dates, and so those impacts are generally a lot healthier and a lot better, like regeneratives for generations to come.
Ezra looks like she wants to say a few things. Thank you, Diana, for making the distinction between those two. I wanted to also ask Dr. Cantu, you spoke a lot about health and air, and also vulnerable communities. I'm also curious to know, given that I'm race equity minded, the impact of vulnerable communities or BIPOC communities as it relates to the coal plant.
As it relates to
the coal plant.
So, yes. So you think about the community where we live, the air we breathe, where we play, where we work, etc. But if you think about the coal plant, it's next to a community. And many times, and we know that right now, 2 out of 5 Hispanics are located within 30 miles of a plant, a power plant. 68% of African Americans. Those are traditionally what we think of in terms of marginalized communities that are unduly burdened with a lot of what we call health disparities, those gaps in health. So being in a community in which the air that they breathe or the air that surrounds them are going to have pollutants, that's going to unduly burden that community, which tend to be, the statistics we know, demographically, that's going to be your marginalized, your communities of color, your vulnerable communities, your low-income communities. So that's how we look at when we say undue burden, because of where they live. Hope that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm also thinking, so from a race equity lens, I know the city has committed to having more of a race equity lens, so that would behoove us to really focus on that. And we already have some of the data on how these communities are disproportionately impacted. Right. Okay, and then Chrissy, you brought up a lot of great points around regulation and the legislations and trying to keep up with you. But I guess I'll pick, let's see, you talked about the carbon dioxide. There's no legislation. But that we as a city did commit to trying to curb that, right? And so we came up with the CPAC. So that's a great example of like we can be, on top of our game and be forthcoming. The good neighbor rule, wow. I do have a question. I've heard people say, you know, the pollution that we're experiencing here in San Antonio, it comes from other places. You know, it's coming down from, I have no idea what they mean when they say other places, but it means to say it's not the plant, it's not the, you know, industrial things we have going on here. What would you have to say to that?
Sure. Yeah, in fact, the state of Texas made a formal argument to the Environmental Protection Agency that said we shouldn't even bother putting San Antonio in non-attainment because, but for the emissions from Mexico, we would be in attainment here. And Mexico is the reason we have bad air, effectively. And this is not true. There are some emissions. There's a small percentage of emissions that come from out of the country and impact San Antonio, but that's the kind of the case along a whole bunch of non-attainment areas across the country. So, you know, Texas making this argument here at the same time that they also make the argument that only San Antonio should be a non-attainment area, and we won't include Comal or Guadalupe counties or Atascosa counties or the Eagle Ford, but we only want to look at Bexar County. And so we're only going to hold the emissions inside Bexar County responsible. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't balance. And so the EPA rejected that request from TCEQ, excuse me, and said so little of the pollution comes from out of the country, and so much of it comes from within Bexar County and regionally that is not a valid argument for this request. And basically said, so state of Texas, figure out a plan to reduce the pollution that impacts the air quality in Bexar County. In many other places, you have multiple counties forming a non-attainment sort of region or a multi-county non-attainment area. Houston, Galveston, Brazoria non-attainment area, for example, or the Dallas-Fort Worth non-attainment area. It's multiple counties. And it's in part due to it's multiple counties that are perhaps in non-compliance, meaning there's a monitor somewhere in that county that shows that the air isn't safe to breathe. But it's also a recognition that ozone is formed regionally. Cars commute from Comal County and come into Bexar County. There are cement cones just outside of Bexar County that certainly impact the pollution levels here. And so so on one hand, it's true, it's not all coming from just Bexar County, but also the state argued that that's all that should be, and if at all. And so we can't really have it both ways. And that's why there's an Alamo Area Council of Governments. Like it's a recognition that we're kind of all in this together, especially for regional air quality issues. But again, EPA did find that so much of it is occurring locally, and there's so much that can be done. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there locally that, like a coal plant, like, I don't know, a large auto manufacturer that has a lot of paint, like auto emissions, that we can take at least initial steps, and then maybe an argument like that can be made. That's the general idea behind the way EPA made that decision. Again, much more sophisticated than the way I just described it with a lot of modeling and data.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that. And I think we'll take some questions from the audience that you wrote down on some index cards. Could I please have them? It is time. I always get nervous when the index cards begin to approach me because I'm like, can I read? I hope I can read people's words, but let's give it a try. And can we reduce the lights? Jamie's getting a little bit. Her contacts.
I'm sorry, they're drying up my contact from the lights. I want to see you in the audience.
Is there a way to turn off maybe this side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here. We're not just here to sit here. I mean, that's
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, my contacts were drying up, so thank you. It is. Okay, good. I'm not the only one. I feel like a chicken I didn't chew.
No, not
Oh, very good. I was just really chicken and you didn't expire expiration. Buy it now. Here it is.
Okay, Okay, all right, so we have a question. Let's see, this one comes from the live stream. Okay, geothermal, as far as I know, is non-carbon emission polluting. 10 years ago, geothermal was being considered. Let's get CPS Energy involved in community geothermal. Thoughts? Who wants to take this?
So, as part of our Flex Power Bundle RFP, we asked for proposals on all kinds of technologies, and I don't know, we had over 300 different submissions back to us. I will tell you, just as the current leader of CPS Energy, I'm very supportive of geothermal as a technology. I think it's going to play a role in our transition from where we are today to where the community wants us to be in the future. The price point, quite frankly, compared to even solar and some of the other options, is a little high. So our team is working on trying to put some pilot projects together to test the technology and the company that that we think has an opportunity for us, and try to get the price point down to where we think is competitive with with some of our other options. But I think we have an opportunity to do some sizable geothermal. I mean, that's not a technology that's going to be available tomorrow, but we are working on looking at a pilot project to test it, to understand how it's going to work for us, and then thoughtfully move into utility scale opportunity down the road. So I agree. I think geothermal is an opportunity for us.
Okay, thank you for that, Rudy. Another question from livestream is, can we say more about 3 adjustment factors on our CPS bills? Retail electric fuel, regulatory, and gas costs. Has or will CPS reveal how it calculates these fees?
Sure, I'll speak at a very high level. The main reason why we can't really break out that fuel cost by kind of component is just it's a system limitation. We're in the process of upgrading. We've really run off of Windows 2000, for lack of a better term, when now we're at XP or whatever the current version of Windows is. And so a lot of the things that we have to do, that may be an old Windows. All right. Sorry, IT is not my thing. I'm an operations guy. But the work that we're doing right now to upgrade our computer system is going to open a whole new world to us in terms of billing transparency, in terms of our ability to see the solar on rooftops and the batteries that are coming and all the distributed technology. We have to get this computer system upgrade in place to be able to gain access to utilize those in a new way. But that's the future. CPS Energy is thinking about that. We're making the investments. We'll have to go back to council in a couple of years, because that's probably a $300 to $500 million potentially project once we actually get it all scoped out. So it's a sizable investment that will carry us into the future. But and at that point, we'll be able to redo our bill and really show you all the various components. All the fuel cost components are all pass-throughs. We don't make any money off of them. Whatever we're paying for natural gas to run our natural gas system or to pipe into our coal plant, into our gas plants, is we pass that on. If the price goes up, the fuel factor component goes up, the price comes down, fuel factor component comes down. But what's also in there are regulatory fees that we have to pay to comply with all kinds of different regulations, and STEP, our energy efficiency and conservation programs, are passed through as portions of that fuel charge. So one of the things that we're working on right now is to send out information to every customer that will show you what you're paying in fuel and lay it out by component, how much of that fuel charge goes to each of those 4 or 5 components that are in the fuel charge. So we've heard you on the transparency on the fuel, something that the Rate Advisory Committee has been spending a lot of time talking about. And so we will be working on that to try to get some information out to our customers.
Thank you. So the next question is for you, Rudy. I should just let you keep the mic. What will you do or are doing to regain community trust and to set yourself apart from your predecessor?
Can I answer that?
before I give it to Rudy. So, you done it? Sorry. I'm Trustee Gonzalez, Janie Gonzalez, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. It's always good to be in my neighborhood. And just very similar, I was raised in District 4, I lived in District 5. I grew up with LULAC and Southwest Voter Registration, and so a lot of similarities. But back to what is Rudy doing differently? I wouldn't have supported Rudy to be the interim CEO if I felt that he didn't have strong values that were aligned with my vision as a trustee for CPS Energy organization. You know, I didn't take lightly to become a trustee for CPS. Frankly, I didn't want anything to do with it. And I'm gonna tell you why I chose to do it. When I grew up in District 4, I ran for office because I didn't like the public school system and the injustice of the education system that we were getting in District 4, and I wanted to make a difference, so I ran for state representative. I lost, but I learned a lot from it. But the point is that I remember giving my dad flyers, and I don't know if you know this, but my dad worked for CPS, he was a mechanic. And I never saw my father because he had the night shift. In order for him to make more money, he had to work the night shift. And so I only saw my father, and I still remember vividly in District 4, there's a station in District 4, and we would take him to dinner. And so I would get to see like 30 minutes of my dad, and maybe lucky on weekends. And so I knew I was losing the race. And so I told my dad, hey, please pass out these flyers. Maybe some of your workers, you know, they all live, a lot of them live on the south side, would vote for me. And they looked at him and they didn't believe that his daughter from that part of town would be running for state representative. Right, that someone from the south side was running for office, was educated, and was running for office. And so when I had the opportunity to become a CPS Energy trustee, I really said, I'm going to do this to honor my father, to show that someone from that part of town can be part of an organization and find a way to give back. So this goes back to Rudy. Me supporting Rudy is because I do want to work with a CEO that's making himself available not only to his trustees, but is actually listening to his trustees and making a difference. I don't want to be part of an organization that's so bureaucratic that a CEO believes that it lives in a glass castle and you cannot make yourself available. And I think that that's the drastic difference between the previous CEO and the current CEO. He really, really cares. You know, we might not always agree as trustees, but I will tell you this, I would not back him up if I didn't feel he was an authentic leader that really cares about being available to the community. And so I want to be on a board with an individual who really cares about San Antonio. And so, you know, I want you to give him a chance. He's demonstrated in a very short amount of time to make himself available. He's been at all RAC meetings. Anytime we're asked to be out in the community, he doesn't hesitate to do it. And so that's the kind of CEO that I want. I want a CEO that's available to the people. And that's just my opinion, my humble opinion, and my view of why I support Rudy.
Very briefly, I know you all have a lot of questions. The job that we do for the community is important, and you know, it's as difficult as the last 2 years have been. You know, I get, and my team gets how important that what we do to the community is. And so, you know, we're trying to listen, we're trying to engage differently. I'm here, you know, and I've really been everywhere that I've been asked to go to have these conversations. And we may not always agree on a solution or an outcome, but I certainly want to listen and present our board with unsolicited feedback that we're getting from the community so they can make informed decisions. And, you know, I don't have agendas. I don't, you know, I know the business. I understand the challenges that we're facing, and I'm trying to present to, in a very quick manner, solutions to the board that they feel good about, that are responsive. And so I'll continue to do that as long as I'm in this seat. We're going to have to win back trust one important conversation at a time, and then go do the things that we commit to doing. And that's really what we're focused on. And I think over time, the folks who have been upset with us for the last year and a half now will come around hopefully and recognize we're just trying to do the very best that we can.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, with weatherization expiring soon, What can low-income families expect for the future of weatherization programs?
I can't speak where every other trustee stands, but I can tell you that I am in favor of supporting weatherization programs. Again, I live in the neighborhood, and my mom lives in the neighborhood. I mean, all my entire family is in 78207. So I know that if it wasn't a program like that, it would be very challenging for people in the community. So I can only speak on my behalf as a trustee. I do plan to support the program. Where I think differently, I think that all of us are hurting in our pocketbooks, you know, and so I am a little concerned I'm leaning towards supporting a smaller package, because I do think that right now consumers, regardless of social class, are hurting in some form or fashion in their pocketbooks. And so, but definitely I am a supporter of the weatherization program. I think it's excellent. I'm also a big proponent of introducing more creative ways to address some of the concerns all of you have stated, and I think it's an excellent program that we should invest in, and it's an opportunity for us to be creative and to also, you know, educate different alternative sources, and then be able to preserve some of the historical programs that have worked to address some of the concerns that we're expressing today.
Reed, did you want to say something?
Well, thank you, Rudy. This is a big issue with the RAC, and it's a real pleasure to be here with about a fifth of the RAC. I mean, you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, you got 5 of us here. And that's important, because if you look at what we're dealing with, Rudy has the power to run the utility. Vice Chair and her colleagues have the authority to tell him what to do. What we do is pretty much what you're doing. We try to say our place. We're influencers. We don't have any authority or power, just like y'all. So that's why it's so important to have such a good mix on the RAC. And we do. And we've had a lot of discussions about this. Now, I can give you my personal opinion on the step. I've been involved with it now for, gosh, I can't remember. I voted for it years ago when it was first initiated. I believe, and I'll just throw this out to the group because we have lots of different folks that have different ideas, but I believe the New Step program, or whatever it is, has to focus on low-income people. We've had a program that's been very diversified, but I believe most people that have any economic worth in their ability to control worth, they'll save the energy. It's in their best interest. And ultimately, the STEPS program will help them do that. But we're going to also look at the rate structure. We haven't gotten to that first. We had to deal with the rate increase. We had to do with power generation. Now we're dealing with STEP. We believe if we have the right structure for the rates, it will incent people to save that have the ability to save. There's some people, as has been mentioned today, that don't have the ability. I mean, they're just making it. And those are the folks we have to focus on and help. And we have to have the city council, which is also an authority body, recognize that this needs to be in the rate, not in a pass-through. It needs to be a certain amount a month, and it needs to be a program designed for low-income people in disadvantaged areas. It's got a target. What we've done too often is hold up a program and say, who can use it? What we need to do is say, here's the people that need a program, let's design one for them. So I'm very interested in trying to push for that. This is my idea. This is not, full disclosure, this is not the RAC. Each person there's 21 people, and they all have their own opinion, okay? But I do think it's important that we focus this, and I think we have some way to accumulate the data on this as we're going. Not a year later, not 6 months later, not 2 years later. So if we go in and design a program to help low-income people, they will allow us to put a thermostat that we control on their wall. So we have energy conservation. They also allow us to manage the peaks, the quiescent peaks and the normal peaks, with reducing their thermostat. So they're doing both. It's not a one-way deal. They get to help us, we get to help them. And as long as we're accumulating that data on a month-to-month basis, we can see if it's working. If it's not working, we can adjust. So I think that's just one idea that I have. Sorry I took so long to do it, but that's one idea that I think is important. We have many more on the rack that's going to come forward, and we'll hear about those as we go on. But that's one way I think to help people with new stuff.
I just want to add
Thank
something
you,
real
Chrissy. I
quick.
wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, more like an add-on. So I am I'm a big cheerleader of energy efficiency programs for a lot of the reasons we just heard. We can go back to Winter Storm Uri, we can go back to any recent hot summer day. Weatherization, energy efficiency programs keep people safer in their homes. It improves air quality at the very local level, like your home, the most local level, and it improves quality of life. So, but beyond that, it does all the amazing things that we are missing in Winter Storm Uri, which is it provides grid reliability. A really robust, huge, and I'm a proponent of a big one, at least studying it, energy efficiency program, like the kind of innovation that CPS, I think, kicked off with the original STEP program, and the framing, which was, we're going to avoid building a big old dirty coal plant. And we're going to do it through energy efficiency programs. We're going to be smart about it. We're going to follow our progress, maybe not as quickly as Reed would have liked, but we're going to make sure that we meet our metrics. We're going to beat our goals. And CPS should be singing at the top of a mountain about how successful they were and not hiding around the fact that some folks are, quite frankly, and I don't think there's anyone in this room doing this, mischaracterizing the quality of the program, the purpose of the program, and the successes of the program. It is a wild success, and we should be so excited that it worked so well. We should be doubling down. I don't mean necessarily actually doubling, but we should study big and see how much money we can save on fuel costs, treating it as a fuel cost. How much money are we going to save as gas prices keep ballooning out of control? If we don't have to buy gas at peak prices during hot summer days or crazy cold, unusual winter nights, right? What else are we going to do? We're going to keep people safer in their homes, the very folks that Reed has been talking about. And I think that there is just a little bit of a gap of information. I don't know it because I haven't seen the full study. How much money could we possibly save on fuel? How much money can we possibly save by not having to invest in new steel in the ground that will then require us to buy more fuel, specifically gas, the very industry that y'all are suing, because they manipulated the market during Winter Storm Uri. And I think it's just a really exciting opportunity, and I just hope that we aren't shy about that and look at all the possible benefits. It's keeping people safe in their homes. It's getting people to work in communities that are right here. I mean, you gotta have someone come to your house to put in the stuff, right? To measure, you got auditors. It's a whole slew of jobs, and I just think it's a really cool opportunity for San Antonio to continue to lead in this way, and I hope we do.
Thank you, Chrissy. Dr. Cantu?
Yes, real quickly, I think too, just what this looks like on the ground, weatherization, I'm so glad that you're in support of it, because particularly low-income communities feel so many things are out of their control. And weatherizing their home gives them that empowerment, that gives them that control. I can conserve. So I just, one of those extra added benefits to it, what it means on the ground. On the ground.
And the other thing I would like,
Let me just add one more point to that. When I talk to people that do need help, they want to help back, okay? They don't want to just take, they want to help back. And so they want a program like Chrissy, Dr. Cantu was talking about, so that their thermostat can be controlled, that they do start learning what circuits are really hurting them. We really haven't focused enough on the people that need the help and too much on programs that people are selling.
And I guess the only thing that I would add, she talked about why are we excited about it. I mean, as a trustee, my first year was like, okay, I'm learning. The second year, boom, it was like the pandemic, and then everything that happened, and we had black eyes. I mean, we're bruised up. I mean, we're almost, almost suffer from post-traumatic stress from everything that took place. So as a trustee, the only thing that I can ask you, and I'm only speaking as for me, I am not speaking on behalf of my colleagues, is that just like I see you at every meeting talking about us closing the plant down, I need to go to every meeting and tell me that you're gonna support me for this program. And so it goes both ways. And so you ask me why I'm here, well, because I need your support. If I cannot champion something, if you're not there. And so just like you want me to be excited, I need you to back me up. I don't want to be the only one being in the Express News where I'm being put down with sandals, chanclas, because supposedly I only represent the South Side and the small business and the community people. So if I'm going to stick my neck out and I'm going to fight for programs, I need you to also back me up at meetings. And so it goes both ways. And so, we're here, we're passionate about it, and I am very sincere about that program, but I need your support too. So just like I see you at every board meeting for other things, I need your support for this as well.
She's never gonna get over it, Diego.
I don't even wear chanclas for God's sake. I'm barefooted or I wear heels. That's just the way it is in your society. And I don't wear black and blue lipstick or whatever. So that looks like they gave me on the first meeting.
Okay, so next question is for Dr. Cantu. Does coal kill and how?
I'm sorry, does
Coal kill and how?
So we know that there are pollutants in the burning of coal that contribute to asthma attacks, cardiovascular disease, other respiratory illness, COPD, etc. So is there a direct line between that and killing? I don't know, but what we do know is there's association with those contaminants and these diseases. And if that individual lives in a area with a food desert, does not have health insurance, has poor access to health care, those conditions are going to become much more exaggerated. Maybe not seek help until later in the disease process, and yes, that could lead to death. So, direct line, no, I don't know, but certainly the association is there, and then when you add social determinants of health on top of that, then you can see.
I've heard you speak about the particulates, is that right? Can you say a little bit about that?
No, I did not.
Or, no, not, I'm sorry. It's another presentation that you had about particulate matter.
Yes, the air particulate matter. Yes, that can be also very, very, the air particulate matter that's in emissions coming from the coal plants, coming from power plants. The issue with air particulate matter is that it's a very, very small molecules that after you breathe it in for so long, what it can do is get into your cardiovascular system and can contribute to congestive heart failure, heart attacks, etc. So our air particulate matter can be very, very harmful for someone who has cardiac issues, who has a family history of cardiac issues, who's had previous heart attacks, or other congestive problems, congestive cardiac problems.
Thank you for expanding on that. Diana and Reed?
And just to also expand on in the ways that coal could be harmful when we look at through an environmental justice model, a holistic model, we look at from where it comes out of to where it goes, from cradle to grave process, so how it's extracted, where and which communities it's being extracted from, how it gets to the coal plant, and where it goes after. And so that's also sort of some of the process that we look at in terms of transitioning and how coal could affect human health and environmental health.
Just to follow on what Deanna just said, we have to look at the life cycle of any fuel, whether it's natural gas with methane emissions or whether it's coal with particulate emissions, whether it's the storage issue with nuclear. Having worked in the late 70s and early 80s in the coal business in Perry and Leslie counties in Kentucky, I saw plenty of people die with black lung. And it was a real problem. We only had one underground mine, and most of our mines were strip mine. So it wasn't as bad, and we were very careful with it. But earlier they weren't, and it's a real problem. And those communities really do suffer. I can think of several of them: Williamston, West Virginia, Hazard, Kentucky. It's a tragic thing. And the same thing with. Think about it. We don't use Eastern coal; we use Western coal. But where is the train comes right through town, right? And there's sprayable material coming off of it there. So we have to look at that, and there are people that I have known and I've seen that do die from coal, and it's pretty obvious when we're extracting.
Thank you, Reed. Next question is, the current CPS Energy rate structure rewards higher consumers by reducing their cost per kilowatt hour once they exceed a certain amount. Do you plan on changing this to encourage all consumers to conserve energy, as other major cities have done?
I guess the way I'd answer that question is that the rate advisory committee is going to look at how do we structure our rates to be as equitable as they possibly can. How do we, support our low moderate income folks that maybe have higher utility burdens. We've studied utility burdens probably over the last year and a half now, more so than maybe we ever have in the history of our company. We understand what census tracts are most impacted. We've had discussions with council during the last rate case regarding, can we do some type of rate freeze for seniors? And there are all kinds of ways that you can design rates to achieve an outcome. You've got one cost to provide the services that we provide for our community. How you split those costs up is important to achieve policy outcomes. And we're right now looking at all the ways that those rates can be restructured. Just to break down, which most people don't recognize, 90% of our customers in San Antonio are residential customers. Of that 90%, about 60% of those are low moderate income. So the majority of our customers in San Antonio are low and moderate income customers. Very old housing stock, very inefficient homes. The other 10%, of that 10% of business customers that make up our system, 90% of those customers are small business customers. There's only about 5,000 true, larger industrial type customers. So how you kind of chop up that cost and allocate it out, there's some significant challenges with who, pays for, when you lower cost for one group of customers, you have to increase it somewhere else because the total is the same. And so we have to be real thoughtful about how we go about this process because, again, the good majority of our customers are going to pay one way or the other, even if you restructure rates. When we start talking about closing Spruce down, by and large, it's our residential customers who are going to pick up that cost, and it's going to impact our low and moderate income customers that we have to be paying attention to. So that's a long answer to a short, really, version of it. Yes, we're looking at restructuring our rates, but that's going to be a much more difficult community conversation, even than the decision to close Spruce down. I think Rudy and I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you, Rudy. Okay, we have to understand that we do not live in a microcosm. Unfortunately, we're part of ERCOT. And in 99 to 2001, our communities were allowed to opt into competition. We didn't. We kept our certificate area. The REAs kept their certificate areas, and you have a few other communities like Austin and a few smaller ones. But we are not immune from ultimately being in competition. Because, and let me try to explain this very straight. Right now, if you look at our commercial rates, they are higher than rates in deregulated areas such as Dallas and Houston. I've seen the slides, the CPS folks have given this to us, the press probably has the slides, so it's there. And so right now, if you look at the cost, it is. Now, there is a very important principle in rate making that's been there, 80 years, and that is you pay your cost. If you're a person and you cause the utility to incur a cost, you pay that cost. That is the equity principle. You can deviate from that, and Christy can talk about that, I'm sure. You can deviate from that some, but if you deviate too much, you're going to get a lawsuit. And that's what happened in Austin. The commercial rates got much higher than the residential rates. Now, we're competitive in the residential to what I would call non-promotional rates. And we're doing, I know Rudy and his team are doing everything they can to keep those. And the point we tried to make during the rate case is the thing that hurts our disadvantaged folks most is a rate increase. So we don't give them a 13.8% rate increase. We give them exactly what they have to have right now. Because every dollar in their pocket is a precious dollar. And on top of that, if we do follow the cost structure, that you incur a cost, you pay the cost. That is how you will see the larger customers. They pay a lot more fixed cost, but their variable costs can go down. So in the total cost, we do not have an advantage. Our commercial customers right now do not have an advantage over the deregulated areas from the data that I've been given by CPS. And that's a very important thing. If we push them too far out, they will potentially get together and sue us and try to break the certificated area, or they'll move somewhere else. And in some cases, maybe that happens. But the rate structure that we're going to take up after we finish the step and the power generation is going to be a very important discussion. And it needs a lot of people giving input to the people here that are on the rate committee or other people. Come to our deal, and we need to do it. Okay? Thank you.
Hi, Richie,
I know you want to respond, Chrissy. I just want us to be very cognizant of Christopher, who's seated right here. He's our timekeeper. I failed to mention this. Yellow means you're getting close to time. Red is you're super close to the time limit.
Where's the green?
So there you go. Thank you, Christopher, for helping us. Chrissy, go ahead.
I just want to add something kind of high level about rates that I've been so far unsuccessfully advocating for here, which is we've heard both Reed and Rudy refer to a rate case. There hasn't been a rate case. A rate case is an adjudicated proceeding. There's been a rate application and rate approval, but we haven't seen anything close to an adjudicated proceeding, meaning an opportunity like where it's like a little trial where you bring experts and different parties can come together. The industrial customers we just heard so much about, they have plenty of lawyers and clients, and they are well represented and can come and model and challenge and present their version of what they think ought to happen. Consumers ought to have a representative. Low-income customers ought to have a representative. And I think that we don't have to talk about this so esoterically. We can just have a process, even though CPS Energy sits in a competitive market with some confidential information. We can still have this process. By way of example, Austin Energy is proposing a rate increase right now. A bunch of people not happy about it, and those people who are not happy about it are going to get to present their case on how much stuff should cost, what the actual needed income is for the utility, and then likely on rate structure. And I highly recommend, advocate, beg, cajole, whatever, that CPS Energy look at what's happening in Austin Energy and find a version that works here. Obviously what works perfect in Austin is not going to work here, but y'all are the same kind of utility, a municipal utility sitting in ERCON, so you should have a lot more similarities than dissimilarities as far as the kind of process you can unveil the community to. And so there's just so much opportunity to get basically the entire community really engaged in a real process that I hope that's something that we can look forward to here.
Agreement of what's been said, but I also just have a specific question in terms of, can you share I don't know if you shared the process that is happening existing for the rate structure, and I know there's this existing rate advisory committee, but outside of sort of that specific group of people, what can the community expect, or when can the community expect to have some of these conversations around the rate structure?
Okay, I'll be real brief. I didn't know the card thing there, sorry. But I didn't. Look, we've got to get through this power generation and the STEP program. We're kind of having to take things as they come. And the next thing after that will be to look at the rate structure. And it's very simple. You have an accumulated cost, you allocate that cost between various customer classes, and then you decide how that customer class is going to actually get billed. And the rate structure, when people normally talk about rate structure, they talk about how they're getting billed. We have a bigger issue. We've got to understand that we're allocating the cost properly. Because if we over-allocate costs to a group, they're going to overpay. And that study's being done right now. It takes about 8-9 months. Rudy can talk to that. When that comes back, it should line up pretty close with us starting to engage the community on after you figure out what's getting allocated to a customer class, how that customer class actually gets billed.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I have, by the way, a baby in a taco blanket makes me very happy. So the process for having conversations on rates, it's like the Declaration of Independence, and I'm not saying it like flippantly. You know, our governance structure was set up to manage that process a certain way, and that process is that, you know, when we have a need, we go to our board. Our board, you know, tells us whether they agree with us. We go through a process with the city, which is, and look, Chrissy, I've been through 2 rate cases at the PUC, and now I've been through 2 rate cases here in San Antonio, and the level of scrutiny that the city puts on our budgets, and we go line by line on our costs, is every bit, if not more, you know, structured than what I've dealt with at the Public Utility Commission. So just by our governance, you know, kind of model here in San Antonio, the board has to, you know, kind of declare that we're asking for more revenue, and the city has gets to approve it's not even just an up or down vote. I mean, they can actually take what we're asking for and change it based on that process. And what the board has done, over the last year, they've engaged not only the Citizens Advisory Committee that has existed for a long time, but now the Rate Advisory Committee does their own process to determine whether or not they agree with it or not. So while I hear you, I understand why Austin's doing what they're doing, because that's what their city council and their governance model has required of them. And they also got sued by their industrial customers, but at the PUC, and it was kind of a negotiated, process to get to where they are today, through their governance process. Our governance process, we're just following kind of how it's supposed to work for CPS Energy to have a thoughtful, conversation. And I can tell you, I know it was an abbreviated conversation. I'd like the next one to be much, kind of more pronounced and thoughtful and give more time to the community. I recognize it's a frustration, and we are going to try to do better next time. But I will tell you, I had 3-4 meetings a day for, the 2 or 3 months that we were involved in that process, talking to anybody who would listen to me. So we tried really hard to have this conversation in a thoughtful manner, and we'll keep doing that.
And he left one organization out. We also have the Municipal Utility Commission that also, everything that we're talking today, rate case, RAT, everything goes through the MUC. You have Councilwoman Sandoval on that, you have Harvey, you have Raul, you have Courage, and then you have Dr. Andrea Rocha. So you have all those individuals too. So it's not just the CEO, not the CEOs, the Board of Trustees. We're having to go through MUC, there's RAT, there's CAT, and then there's community, and then there's us. So just so you know, trustees are way at the bottom, and that's okay, because that process has drastically improved in less than 3 years.
And I can only speak the 3 years that I started. So the 3 years is drastically has more levels of participation and oversight.
Next question. Despite federal subsidies, solar panels are still inaccessible to many low-income residents. Community solar is a nationwide model for making solar energy accessible to those who, for some reason, can't install solar panels in their homes. Are you considering adding more of these programs? How can we ensure these programs are accessible to all residents?
So we have had hugely successful community solar programs here in San Antonio. We, over the last 10 years, we have tried to do solar every way possible. You know, we've had meaningful rebates. We can show we're working on some slides for the next presentation. They'll show you the adoption of solar in San Antonio is going up. The cost of solar is coming down. The rebates come down with it. It's a pretty mature market for those who can afford the $30,000 or $20,000 solar panels. So we're kind of moving away from the rebates, not because we don't support rooftop solar. It's gonna happen. It's happening, and it's gonna continue to happen. Our focus is really to turn towards community solar, as you're talking about. What we really are trying to do is find ways to engage those who maybe live in a townhome where they don't own the structure, you know, but they live in an apartment, whatever the case might be. They can still buy a panel or 2 or 10 through a community solar program, and we don't have to run that through the rebate. You know, we don't have to really rebate that, although you could. We can contract as part of our process for procuring solar generation for community solar, and then turn around and create a program that makes it affordable for our low-income customers. And that's, for me, that's a winning kind of strategy, and that's what we're going to do going forward. So community solar will absolutely be a part of our portfolio going forward.
Yeah, I think one of my first, when I started understanding the program, I was not too happy that it was putting more burden on low-income people. And so one of the committees that I chair is the resilience, and they changed the name a couple of times, resilience and technology, and part of, you know, again, coming from that area of industry expertise, I'm always trying to find creative ways of how we can leverage technology to empower low-income communities, and how can we problem solve things in a better way. And so things don't always happen overnight. Like I said, we had a big distraction. The world had something to worry about, the pandemic, and so we are a little behind on things that we wanted to execute sooner. And so right now we're kind of playing catch up, and so that is a commitment that I'm very passionate about, that we find ways to make it affordable for low-income people to have access to solar.
If I could just add to that, Vice President, Vice Chair Gonzalez has really been a big help in that. And we do understand that when people put rooftop solar on, it is typically the higher income people that can do it. And one point that the rate advisory committee has tried to get people to understand is we all as a community own these plants, and we have a fixed cost on those plants. Well, the people that are doing rooftop solar are not really supporting our investment, but they're getting the backup for that power. So I'm also joining Vice Chair Gonzalez and Rudy on community solar. We really have to do it. We have to show lower income people how they can do it. And it's good.
And there's cool roofs too. So again, our goal is to have multiple products. Not everybody, maybe their home, their structure can't handle them. So there's a cool roof permit that was introduced by former Councilmember from District 1. So there's a lot of different ways to meet the goal. That is just one of many. And so again, we're committed to diversifying either old technologies, new technologies, and then taking advantage when technology has been disrupted or commoditized, then to be able to introduce them in a different form of fashion at a better price point.
Okay, next question. How is CPS calculating and preparing for the cost of not weaning off fossil fuels?
CEO is attacked.
I would characterize this really as a utility that is evolving. We're evolving our thinking in a lot of ways right now. Primarily, my number one job as leader of this organization is to ensure those lights are on when our customers expect them to be. So my commitment to reliability has to drive, everything I think about the future, along with affordability, given, the makeup of our customers. We are about to embark, if we make the decisions that I believe we will make in the very near future, we're about to pull about 3,000 megawatts worth of fossil fuel generation out of our portfolio, which is huge. It's huge. It's what y'all have been asking us to do. We're moving in that direction. I do think that some of that capacity, not all of it, will need to be backed up as we're making technology decisions on the sustainable technologies. We're going to need some natural gas as part of that to bridge us towards the future, as we're getting into geothermal, as other technologies are coming into play, I've got a responsibility to keep the lights on. And so, the 900 megawatt solar deal that we've been working on for 2 years now, as Janie said, the pandemic, the winter storm, it got us off our game in terms of executing on these strategies, but we're back now. We're negotiating those contracts right now. I've got the authority today to sign those 900 megawatts worth of solar, which will really is intended to replace the older aging gas steam units that have been 30, 40, 50 years old at this point and need to go. So solar primarily will be the technology to replace the older gas steam units. But when we don't have, when the nighttime, sun's not shining, wind's not blowing, I gotta have something to back that up, or else I'm going to be buying natural gas on the market either way. So we have to make these decisions thoughtfully. That's what we're trying to do. We're not replacing fossil fuels megawatt for megawatt with fossil fuels. We're bringing new technologies in, and we're committing to transitioning towards these other technologies that we believe have promise, that we just have to make sure are reliable enough so I can ensure the lights stay on. But the other aspect of that, and it's the last thing I'll say, I see you raising your card on me. We've got a the third hottest growth market in the country is right here in San Antonio. So not only do we need to replace the stuff that we've got to serve our customers today, I've got to be planning for the growth that's coming, and some of this is big growth. We got data centers all over San Antonio, and about 20 of them lined up out the door right now that want to come here as well, and they are big users. So it's not just about the megawatts we need to serve the customers we have today. I've got, million and a half people that I expect to see here in our, area probably over the next, 15, 20 years, and I've got to be planning for that too. So it is a complex process. We're committed to doing it in a sustainable manner, but I've got to be reliable and affordable first.
Yeah, and again, he calls it transition, and the way that I see it, it's the modernization of the grid, but it's with the vision that it's sustainable, that's going to be with us making equitable investments, and not just one group benefiting from the other. Because we have a responsibility, again, for those who have means to have access and control to do the things that they need, and then we have a responsibility to those that don't have the means. And so when I personally have a vision for it is, again, modernizing the grid for the better of the community and to make good, meaningful decisions and investments. And so we're committed to that.
Thank you. Next question. To CPS. A 2021 report by the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy states that to avoid future blackouts, instead of building new power plants, Texas should improve the energy efficiency of homes and implement technologies that shift electricity use away from times of peak demand. Despite this, CPS still hasn't extended funding for the STEP program. What do you have to say?
We've got a board that has struggled with this decision for the last couple of years now for a whole lot of reasons. I think now we're on the right track. I've advocated from day one that I believe a utility like CPS Energy, who's tried to be forward-thinking, was an early adopter of solar, an early adopter of wind. I agree with Chrissy. We've done great. We've got an award-winning STEP program. I want to continue that innovation, and I've been, vocal sometimes to my own detriment in front of the board with certain board members who haven't been supportive that we need to do this. And now I got our board finally in a position to take a vote so we can get going down the road. I do believe that I have the support from the board to move forward, and I believe here next month we'll do so. I've got to have 3 votes on my 5-member board to be able to move these projects forward. But me and my team have been vocal from day one that we're supportive of maintaining an energy efficiency and conservation program. And I'll say this, Lexi, I see your hand up. I'll be glad to answer your question. San Antonio has got 250, 270 megawatts worth of demand response. That means our customers lower their usage during peak times of the year, and there's a financial savings to our customers as a result of that. Do you know how much megawatts are available in all of ERCOT outside of San Antonio? 350 megawatts. We have, almost as much demand response right here in our community as there is across the entire state, primarily because we're not in competition and we're focused, we get criticized. Why would you pay somebody to use less of your product? Because it's the right thing to do. That's why. So, I'm bullish on the idea that we got to continue these programs, and I think I finally got my board there that are ready to vote on it. Lexi, I'm sorry, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just want to ask something, I don't know, response to the last question that you had in the overview.
So I have a question about the last response that you had about not shutting or transitioning to natural gas. I know right now the rate advisory committee is looking at models and putting all the stuff in to see and get the numbers on what possibly could come out of Spruce, and it's showing that you have to transition to natural gas. In a meeting that our coalition, we talked to Francine Romero about what the other possibilities are, and right now, Dee and other people on the RAC have told a lot of us that wind and solar are not being modeled out, and y'all are only modeling out the outcomes of natural gas. And so, how can we know what the best, most affordable and resilient option is if we're not accounting for all of the things that are possible? So, can you commit to modeling all of them?
So, yeah, I don't know kind of where that came from. Dee, you've been in the meetings. We're modeling, we're probably going to run, I don't know, Betty, as many models as it takes. There's kind of a baseline model of what we've been doing and what that looks like going forward with or without Spruce. Really, Spruce 2 is the one we really got to pay attention to because it's so new. Look, I wasn't here when the community agreed, to build Spruce 2. Council, supported it and supported it with rates, and we built it. And now the community's stuck with figuring out what to do about it. If the community wants to park it, we can park it, and there's a cost to that. And it's sizable. There's $1 billion worth of equipment that we went out and sold bonds for that our bondholders expect us to use for our system. So there's no just parking it with no impact. So you can pay the cost of parking it. That's option one. You can keep running it. I mean, to meet the goals of CAP, all we need to do is shut down Spruce 1 and we could keep running Spruce 2 and we would meet all the transitional and the 2050 goals. And we're not talking about doing that. We hear you. We need to look at what it takes to close Spruce 2 down. So we could run it to the end of its useful life, Spruce 2, or we can transition it to natural gas. And so what we're trying to figure out, and we're going to model all this, we're going to model a baseline kind of case. I don't know that there's a case that allows us to get to 100% renewables, mainly because it would take us 20 years to build as much renewables as we need to get there, right? I mean, it takes 3 to 4 years. It'll take 3 to 4 years for us to build the 900 megawatts we've committed to. And then we got to make some decisions about how much more, comes next. So we're going to model a maximum renewable scenario that we think is affordable for our customers and gives us the reliability that we need. I don't know that that's 100%. Just ballpark, I think it's probably somewhere around 50-60% where it becomes uneconomical and unaffordable for our customers. So we're going to model a max renewable case. We're going to model a max energy efficiency case. That creates a mix of our portfolio that kind of solves all the equation, right? We got to be reliable, we got to be affordable, and we got to lower our carbon footprint and meet the goals of CAP. Which really all we would need to do is close Spruce 1 down, and we're there. If that's the goal, I got a plan that can do that. But I think the community's asking us to do more, and we're going to run as many models as it takes to show you what's possible. So don't, wherever you're thinking we're not going to run the models, we're going to run the models that we're being asked to run to give our board as much information as they need to make a thoughtful decision. What I need my board to do come December I need them to tell me, we think your mix looks like, our mix for the future looks like this. We need a model towards some percentage of renewables, some percentage of what we call dispatchable, whether that's nuclear's really not dispatchable, but natural gas, maybe geothermal, whatever else we can turn on and turn off when we need it, and then some amount of energy efficiency and demand response. That's the decision point that our board is coming to, come December timeframe.
And the only thing that I want to add is that I want a committee conversation, not just through RAC and MUC. I mean, we really need to expand that conversation through several committees, north, south, east, west. It cannot just be, just city council, it can't just be RAC and CAC. I mean, that has to be a meaningful conversation with a lot of diverse key stakeholders and committee members.
Go ahead.
So again, I think there's a real opportunity to have that kind of transparency and a stakeholder process that lets other folks come in, look at your data, look at the modeling, provide their own analysis, something akin to an integrated resource plan that we see other regulated utilities, which is the closest thing that CPS Energy is to other kinds of utilities, and have an opportunity to really pick apart the data. It'll be the best, it'll have the best outcome for the board because they'll get the most information, and then it'll have the best outcome for city council later when they have to approve rates based on your resource plan. And it will, it's basically outsourcing, the analysis, taking your analysis and saying, all right, let's challenge it. Let's get the best result that we can. Because I often hear you say, Rudy, that sometimes the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, and I never hear you say, and then there's a bunch of battery storage coming online in the ERCOT that is just, the floor is falling out below it from cost. Like, it's becoming, solar plus battery, or solar plus storage, wind plus storage is out competing running existing coal plants now. And so what do you think it's going to be in 2, 3, 5, 10 years, right? And so I really like to be able to see that kind of analysis brought to a resource planning discussion.
Yeah, Chrissy, again, I'm trying to sign 50 megawatts worth of battery storage right now that I can't tie vendors down to because there's supply chain issues, there's labor issues, there's all kinds of issues with the timing of getting those batteries in place. I'm not shying away from batteries. I think batteries play a role. It's not base load. The batteries, you say it all the time, but batteries don't run as base load. You put 1,000 megawatts worth of batteries and maybe you get a couple hundred megawatts over a period of time that you need it, and it helps lower the peak. But we are bullish on batteries. And again, the technology that I need to be able to maximize the efficient use of batteries along with rooftop solar, along with community solar and all the other things that we're looking at, it's not in place yet, and it's going to take us 5-6 years to get through a process to get it in place. But I'm with you. Batteries are going to be part of our portfolio going forward. Do not misinterpret what I'm saying. But right now, I'd like to get 50 megawatts worth of batteries that I cannot get under contract. So it's not, it's not as easy as just saying batteries. I got to get somebody who's willing to give me a price I can depend on, that I can model in my financial structure so that our customers have certainty. That's what I'm trying to get at. Many others over there in the maroon, the horrible maroon colored shirt. I'm in the Walmart, by the way, so we're trying.
And that totally makes sense from a supply chain from the pandemic perspective. But it just feels pretty regressive to constantly hear sometimes the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine without talking about, and then just immediately lead to we have to get more gas online. And the other thing I'll add is you said that batteries aren't baseload, neither is Bronning. And you talk about the however many megawatts it is, as though y'all are running it more than 4 to 5% of the time. It's a peaker. And so you're looking to I assume you're looking to replace that kind of
that peaker is a financial hedge. I mean, it's a physical hedge. When the price goes up, we run it, right?
Fair enough, but we hardly ever run it. So it's definitely not base load. And so when we're talking about replacing these 50-year-old plants, we should talk about what we're replacing them to do. It's a little apples to oranges, even though they still are fuel.
I got it.
I think you're supposed to say
I-
something. I'm sorry.
This will be the last comment because we are over time.
Let me just follow up on what Chris was saying, because it's really important what she's saying. First point is, we are in a grid, and that grid has a lot of actors that are doing a lot of different things, so we have to see what's being done. And what Rudy is describing is really a transitional plan. We have about a 1990, 2000 mix of plants. These are old plants, just like Christy said. Those plants were originally built as base load, and now they just come on a few times in the summer. So we really have to transition our portfolio of plants so that we can use more renewables. I hate hearing the word that they're unreliable. They're not unreliable, they're reliable, they're just intermittent. And we have to understand what intermittency is, and we have to deal with it. And we have to deal with it in the next 5 to 7 years. As far as the second point, a deadline, everybody wants a deadline. Well, the economic deadline is 28, okay? 2028, that's the economic deadline. If somebody wants a deadline, it's pretty clear. That's when we're gonna hit the money. And when the money talks, okay, because that goes into our rate case. So right now, and the RAC is looking at 900 megawatts of solar. That's in the model. So we put everything in the model. We're transitioning to that. They're going to do a model that's exactly like what Christy's talking about. It is a resource planning model, and I can assure you it will get lots of visibility because I want to see it, you want to see it, and everybody out there wants to see it. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Reed. So I still did not get to all the questions, but we are at time. I do want to state, though, that most of the, I'd say 80% of the remaining questions were around renewables. Absolutely, as you can imagine. So lots of passion on that. So I guess I hope that we've had a really robust conversation. I want to thank all of the panelists and our guests. I'm going to go ahead and invite DB to come and give a statement, a last statement to close us out.
And by the way, she was my appointee. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody, the panelists who showed up to speak today. It's obviously that they're experts in their area. With Deanna, she's been doing this work for so many years in the community. She's somebody I think a lot of us will look up to, and we appreciate everything that she's doing. Have to thank CPS Energy for being here. I asked Rudy, a while back, will you come to this town hall? And he immediately said yes. If I had asked somebody 6 months ago in that position, will you come to this town hall, and we wouldn't be here. So I do appreciate, I talk to Rudy a lot. I'm on the rate advisory committee, so, he does take his time to talk, and we don't always come in agreement. We're not in agreement right now, right? We have, everybody in this room has an idea of where, not an idea of where we want to be, but where we need to be. What does the science tell us? Where do we need to be by 2030? And the way we're doing business right now in San Antonio, we're not going to get there. We have to do our part. We're only one piece of the whole picture when it comes to the climate crisis, but the city can do their part, and I think that we have, I think we have the people to get us there. Janie Gonzalez also was, said yes. I'll be there if I'm available that day. Dr. Romero is in class tonight. She was not able to be here, so I do want to thank her for meeting with a group of us a couple of weeks ago, but thank you, Janie. We invited city leaders today, city council members, the mayor staff, to be here, and this is who showed up. So we have to recognize that CPS Energy did show up. I think this is the beginning of some hard conversations that we have to continue. I don't think it's resolved today. I don't think we're all able to speak and ask the questions that we wanted to. So our hope, the challenge is that CPS Energy will create this space, something similar to this, so that all those people that were not able to be here or able to ask a question can have their questions answered. I also want to thank the people that helped put this together, our little motley crew. It was Rewiring America, Move Texas, Texas Rising, Southwest Workers Union, Sunrise Movement, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, Party for Socialism and Liberation. You know, they all pitched in to put this event on, so we appreciate everybody who showed up today. And thank you, Lupita, for moderating. We really appreciate that too.
I bet I saw you, I didn't recognize you, but I just want to say I wrote the chat with you because I'm promoting a story about kind of this automotive manufacturing sector. And of course, I saw what you were writing about that, which I was not, yeah, I was working on it before. I just thought that was interesting. It just kind of, it got me thinking a little bit, and like, you know, part of me kind of, you know, part of me says, well, hey, there's all these trade-offs, right? So like, sort of economic development. Not that I, anyways, I guess I'd be curious to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, I'm just wondering, you know, it's something I want to incorporate in the story.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet either. I'm really interested in how a city, like, it always finds stuff you're talking about the Sierra Club, like, you talk about the whole planet, like, so how you know, it's like, there's an entire sector of the economy that it feels like San Antonio has no vision for, like, just like whatever we can get is like right now, and it's
I think those are fair questions. I mean, I don't want to be, like, part of me is like, well, you know, how big of a problem is it? But then it's like, well, maybe it's not a big problem. So I've been thinking about it anyway, so I'll probably be putting in the next 3 seconds talking about that. So that, like,
left off.